Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Stephanie Han is set to return to action against an opponent that has yet to be announced in what is being billed as a WBA title fight. WBA title, I'm going to assume the one at 135 pounds. That's where Stephanie has been campaigning. Stephanie, the younger sister of Jennifer Han, former IBF champion. Stephanie is her younger sister. The Hans are a fighting family with a varied combat background. Set to go down in late July 27th in El Paso, Stephanie's neck of the woods. And as stated, it's supposed to be for the WBA title. Has Katie Taylor finally vacated the WBA title at 135 because she's undisputed at 140? Is that what's going on? Or is there some confusion? Ranked at number 1 via the WBA's lightweight rankings is the United Kingdom's own Caroline Dubois. Needless to say, I don't think Stephanie's going to be fighting Caroline. This fight is set to go down in El Paso. One would think that if it were Caroline that Stephanie were fighting, Boxer would have put the money up to fly Stephanie to the UK, not the other way around. Ranked at number 2 is Canada's own Jessica Kamara, WBA gold champion. Won the vacant WBA gold title a few weeks ago in South Korea opposite the ring former champion Hyun Mi Choi. You think that might be who Stephanie's fighting? It might be. With so many secondary titles in circulation, it's very easy to bill a fight as a world title fight because there are so many different versions of a world title. And that might be who Stephanie's fighting, but I don't know. I'm not sure. The opponent is not yet registered on BoxRec. Jessica Kamara would be a considerable step up in competition for Stephanie. Stephanie, who sports a professional record of 8 wins with no losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 8 professional bouts, where her older sister Jennifer was more of a thinking man's fighter, more of a cerebral fighter. Stephanie's the opposite. Stephanie's a bruiser. Where Jennifer was a boxer, Stephanie's a brawler. Stephanie made her professional debut late 2021 in October, and she's been active. She's been fighting quite a bit since then. She fought 3 times in 2023. She's already fought 3 times this year against journeywomen in developmental fights. She fought once in March, then again in April, then again earlier this month. Now she's set to return to action in late July. But I don't know. I don't know for sure that it's going to be against Jessica Kamara. We'll see. That would be a considerable jump, a considerable step up in class for Stephanie Han, who's still making her bones in the pro ranks, still developing. I'm not sure that she's ready for a fight like that. But at 33 years old, she doesn't have all the time in the world. The thing with Stephanie is that she used to box when she was a kid, but she gave it up for a number of years and went pro only recently, fighting in the necessary developmental fights that you need to fight in, but she really doesn't have all that much time now, does she? Not if she debuted at or around age 30. That might explain a considerable step up in class and a considerable jump in competition. That while it's a big jump, it's not like she has all the time in the world to pussyfoot around. So I'm not sure. Stephanie definitely has something. She has something. Though ideally, she would be given more time to develop more developmental fights, to fully hone her skills and hone her power, how best to deliver it. This seems rushed. Well, when you're 33 years old, you have to. I guess. If she does end up boxing Jessica for Jessica's gold title, maybe it's not for Jessica's gold title. Maybe the full title has gone vacant and Stephanie ends up fighting someone else for it. I'm not completely sure. There's a lot left to the imagination here, but what we do know is she's boxing in late July and it's supposed to be for a world title of some kind. We'll see which one. Men's super middleweight news. I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Canelo Alvarez has been ordered by the IBF to next face his mandatory challenger, little-known William Scull of Cuba. Like most of the IBF's mandates, this one comes at a most inopportune time. So Canelo Alvarez has been ordered to face an unbeaten mandatory challenger in William Scull. The clock for Guadalajara's Alvarez to next face Germany's William Scull, his IBF mandatory challenger, for nearly 2 years. A negotiation period has been assigned for the 2 sides to reach an agreement and avoid a purse bid hearing. Aegon Sports and Events, Scull's Germany-based promoter, confirmed the development early Tuesday morning. I thought you said this guy was Cuban. He is. He was born in Cuba, but he's based out of Germany and promoted by Aegon Sports. Aegon, that's the same outfit that promotes Jack Cole Okay, Canelo holds all 4 major sanctioning body titles. He's made 7 overall successful ring championship defenses since his December 20th win over Callum Smith. 4 have come with every major title at stake since his November 2021 11th round knockout of then unbeaten IBF champion Caleb Plant to fully unify the division. That's saying that he's defended the undisputed crown 4 times. Scull became the mandatory challenger after a July 2022 points win over Evgeny Shevchenko. The title eliminator between unbeaten contenders saw Scull, a Cuban export based in Berlin, win a lopsided unanimous decision.
No, he's the mandatory.
He has been for a while, and while Canelo Alvarez may have successfully defended the undisputed crown 4 times, 3 of those defenses were voluntaries. You're talking about a voluntary defense over Gennady Golovkin, a voluntary defense over Jermell Charlo,
And a more recent voluntary defense over Jaime Munguia just a few weeks ago.
only one of Canelo's more recent defenses came against a mandatory challenger, and the mandatories are now piling up. William Scull among them. Alongside him is Brooklyn's own Edgar Berlanga. It was expected that Berlanga would next get the call as the WBA's mandatory challenger. Berlanga was on the short list of opponents to face Alvarez in May. His name was in the running along with Munguia's, who ultimately won the sweepstakes, though didn't win the fight.
Right.
It was widely believed that Alvarez would move on to face Berlanga in September given the sanctioning body rotation order.
So here's the thing.
Irrespective of what the sanctioning bodies, the alphabet organizations, might want, neither an Edgar Berlanga or William Scull fight is to the fight fans' fancy. They don't want to see Canelo Alvarez in those fights.
That creates a problem.
Canelo has yet to defend versus an IBF-appointed challenger. Plant satisfied the last one for that title when he outpointed Caleb Truax in their January 2021 meeting. Berlanga was only recently named WBA mandatory. The call came roughly 2 months after his 6th round knockout of unbeaten Padraig McCrory on February 24th in Orlando, Florida. At the time, the fight was to determine the next ordered challenger for the WBA regular champion, David Morrell. David Morrell, who has since moved up in weight, his next fight is at light heavyweight.
Him and David Benavidez.
Canelo Alvarez could very well still fight the next opponent of his own choosing, and not the IBF's, though it would threaten to break up his undisputed reign. The IBF requires its champions to honor ordered mandated title fights. Failure to honor the order will be sufficient cause to have the Championships Committee and Board of Directors consider withdrawing recognition of Canelo as their champion.
So what do you do?
On one end, you say that he should have taken care of this guy a long time ago, but a fight with this guy wasn't ordered a long time ago, and a fight with this guy didn't have the profile of a Golovkin fight, the profile of a Charlo fight, a Munguia fight.
That if he would have fought William Scull instead of them, people would have complained about it. They're complaining now.
For the same reason. They don't know who the hell this guy is. They're not familiar with him, and they feel that there are other fighters with more of a profile that Canelo Alvarez can fight, like David Benavidez, like Terence Crawford, that William Scull won't suffice. Mandatory, a no mandatory. So what do you do?
I am very
So like I said, the IBF has a bad habit of ordering these mandatories at very, very inopportune times. I mean, what they did to Jai Opataya, that was just unreasonable.
You stripped that guy out of belt because he wasn't fighting Breedis, just for him to end up fighting Breedis anyway. That is an important detail. Turki Alalshikh wants all the belts to stay together so that Canelo can defend them against a high-profile opponent, but he can't do that if he's inundated with mandates.
I don't want to think. I am focusing in Saturday in the biggest fight of the century.
It's very obvious why Turki Alalshikh wants all the belts to stay together. It's so that one undisputed champion can defend against the other, and if the other is successful, the transference will be complete and a new undisputed champion will be crowned. You don't want to have to resume that process, and it seems that the IBF is an obstacle, a stumbling block, standing in the way of that potential vision with this William Scull mandate. Thus, the obvious solution would be to pay William Scull to stand down, step aside, get his blessing, and see if that dissuades the IBF.
It might.
Previous instances, the IBF, more so than others, has proven stubborn and difficult to deal with. These days, they're a lot more sometime-did. They pick and choose when they want to be stubborn, a lot more than they used to. Thus, I don't know why they're choosing to do this now.
Because William Scull's been the mandatory since 2022, because it's not like Canelo was about to fight David Morrell or David Benavidez. David moved up.
We don't know if David was going to come back down. Thus, the IBF chose this as an opportune time to order this fight. Scull. I see two potential ways to deal with this. Two potential ways. Canelo Alvarez can fight William Scull in September in a non-pay-per-view event.
Because you can't sell that fight at $80?
Or, if you do want to charge $80 for that thing, the undercard has to be something. I mean, it really, really would have to be something for Canelo versus Scull to be the main event.
Right.
Yet another way is to pay William Scull to stand down, step aside, let Canelo fight Terence Crawford uninterrupted. Now you wouldn't be able to do that in September because Crawford's fighting in August. He's fighting Israel Madrimov in August.
He can't fight Israel Madrimov in August, then turn around the next month and move up to 168.
That's obvious. That would push a Canelo versus Crawford fight out towards the end of the year or the beginning of the next one.
You're saying that Canelo Alvarez would have to sit out the rest of this year waiting for Terence?
No, not necessarily. Like I said, he can take care of William Scull in September. He can fight him in a non-pay-per-view fight, or the powers that be can deck out the undercard to where maybe Canelo versus Scull really ain't worth that money, but the undercard is. You have to be reasonable here. If it is your intention to make Canelo versus Crawford, you can't make that fight as soon as September, so Canelo has to keep busy. He has to fight someone.
William Scull is there, an inexpensive opponent.
It's not who people want to see Canelo Alvarez fight, but if you're doing that fight with the assurance that he'll fight Terence Crawford after that, well, then it's okay. Then it's permissible.
You sure?
Let me tell you something about a lot of these people that are poo-pooing all over a Canelo versus Crawford fight. They can say what they want while the fight isn't made. If the fight is made, they're gonna fucking watch it. They're gonna fucking watch it. They're gonna fucking buy it.
The fuck?
Puts a very different complexion on an Israel Madrimov fight because at first it seemed to herald another undisputed run. A third undisputed run at junior middleweight, where now it seems like Terence may spend a very limited amount of time there at 154. Right after that, he might shoot straight up for a Canelo Alvarez fight. Thus, he has to perform. And he has to perform well against Israel Madrimov because if you can barely handle that guy, how are you going to handle Canelo?
You think you can barely handle Israel?
I didn't say that. I'm saying we have to see how he handles Israel to gauge how well he can do against Canelo. Similar physical dimensions between Israel Madrimov and Canelo Alvarez. These are not very big guys, physically imposing fighters.
Neither of them.
We have to see how Terence does against that guy to gauge how well he might do against Canelo. We have to do that. We have to see if Canelo Alvarez plays ball, if he's on board for this. Now, if he's not, I guess Terence can unify 154, stay there, pursue the other belts.
The ongoing debate as to who's the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. Naoya Inoue, Terence Crawford, Usyk if he wins this weekend.
Who's number one? What will go a long way towards strengthening Terence Crawford's argument is becoming an undisputed champion at 154 or an undisputed champion at 168.
That'll help.
Say he beats Israel Madrimov in August, becomes a 4-division champion, like he knew he's a 4-division champion, then he moves up right after that, fights Canelo, beats Canelo. Yeah, I'd say Terence is number one. In a situation like that, though it will require many months of waiting and planning.
So enjoy the ride. Stop arguing so much.
The fact that you have so many ambitious fighters in this era, Terence Crawford, Naoya Inoue, Alexander Usyk, neck to neck for that number one spot, creates a vibrant and thriving environment for the boxing fan because you get to sit back and watch. You get to watch it all play out.
Who's gonna be number one?
Maybe you have Inoue at number one. Maybe you'll have Alexander Usyk there after this weekend, depending on how he looks and how he does. If he becomes a two-time undisputed champion, maybe in the coming months, Terence Crawford will give you reason enough to consider him the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. As a boxing fan, if you are a boxing fan, you ain't got nothing to complain about. There's a lot of potentialities here that make for some great fights. So stop arguing and stop being a wet blanket.
You guys complain too much.
I see His Excellency's vision, and I like that vision. The idea that one undisputed champion might take that leap of faith to take on the other. Some say that Terence is too small. Some say that Canelo is too simple or too old. There's really only one way to find out. These are both extraordinary fighters.
How could Canelo be too old? He's younger than Terence.
Because he fights a lot more often than Terence, and he has a lot more fights than Terence. Wear and tear.
That's how.
But I'm all for it. I'm on board for His Excellency's vision of the near future.